There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me? If you can, just give me a thumbs up, please. Thank you. And then I'm going to also share my screen for now. And just give me another thumbs up if you can see my screen as well. It's not in presentation mode. I'll switch over to presentation mode at 1 o'clock. Right, so you all can see that as well, eh? My screen. Just do that. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. On this side of the world, it is now exactly 1 o'clock. We are going to be starting off our webinar, and welcome to everybody that's here. And Jamie will be assisting me today. She will be admitting everybody, and all the CPD participants. The questionnaire and stuff has been loaded onto the system. And once we conclude or done with our webinar, the recordings would also be made available then for all of you. So this afternoon, we are going to be talking about the pollinator and the honeybee safety within the agricultural sector. The purpose why we're doing this, we all know that food security is one of the major topics going around the country. And the honeybee is one of the major pollinators and for our industry. And I thought it was just good that we go through some of the protocols and stuff for safety of our honeybees, why this happened, and why are we actually just in the situation where we are. So if we look back in 2010, in France, it actually started kicking off where the farmers had an issue with the usage of the pesticide, and they actually won the case because there was high mortality of honeybees, and because of this major action and shift in France, it then started spreading throughout the countries, and everybody
Wait.
can't see the presentation. I heard you, or I saw you. Just let me share again. Sorry about that. I'm going to share again. So sorry about that. Can everybody see it? I'm not in presentation mode. Can everybody see me now?
Yes, we can see you.
Yes, you can see. Okay, right. Sorry about that. So I'm going to start again. So the movement started off in France in 2010, and then there was major concerns because of the honeybees safety factor, and this was then disseminated throughout the world. So what was killing the bees? And I'm going to play you a short little video. This is some of the historic data that has happened, and I'm going to take you through various scenarios and why we are actually just promoting our safety for our pollinators. Okay. Jamie, please, if you can, and just let us just see that you would.
Honeybees are apex pollinators. Around 50
There
food
is
crops
sound,
in
eh?
the country are dependent on them for pollination. The association says their members are reporting more frequently the loss of their bees. Certain chemicals in the pesticides are causing mass deaths. Bees are flying back to their hives and infecting millions, resulting in death.
The amount of hives that's been affected is about 242 at this stage. It does not even include all the wild swarms that's naturally occurring in the region, which has also died. So the main problem is in that 240 hives plus, is there between 20 and 50,000 bees in the hive. So you can see how many millions of bees have been killed just in this short term from October, November up till now.
The farmers are paying us to bring in bees to pollinate their flowers so that they can make produce from this. But they're killing us, the bee farmers. So therefore we can't actually make an income or take anything away from it because our bees are dead. Without bees we have nothing. The farmers need us, and we actually need the farmers because they're bringing an income to beekeepers. A lot of beekeepers, that's their income, is either pollination, byproducts or honey.
Lab results have shown which chemicals are causing the mass deaths. Experts say these poisonings have reached an unprecedented level, especially in this province.
What we're very concerned about is that some farmers are using pesticides and fungicides recklessly. They're not following the guidelines on the labels. We term this going off-label. For instance, certain farmers are spraying when their crops are in full bloom and the honeybees are foraging and doing pollination on these crops. It's completely irresponsible to spray chemicals on the crops when the bees are doing the job of pollination.
The association has appealed to farmers to be more aware of the chemicals in their pesticides and to use products that are more bee-friendly. Segui Chetty, SABC News, Riversdale in the Western Cape.
Okay. So that was a bit. These are just the backgrounds of the incidents that has occurred and the various responses out there in the media, and why we as the association need to draw attention to everybody for the responsible use and safekeeping of the bees. The bee poisoning and by pesticides in the past 10 years in South Africa, and these were studies that was done. Colleague Dr. Gerard Verdoring was also involved with this, so he basically assisted me with the content, some of the content of these slides, and through the various studies, these were the pesticides that were found on samples that was taken from the bees. Okay. So what are the specific pesticides harming bees? So numerous pesticides have been recognized as detrimental to the bee population, and they normally impact the nervous system, and by that it also impacts the foraging habitat and the overall colony well-being of the entire hive, or wild bees basically the colonies as such. So when we are looking at the pesticides, and the most alarming of these pesticides, we are looking at the neonicotinoids, and these insecticides, including imidacloprid, are extremely toxic to bees, even in minimal amounts. They hinder the bees' navigation and foraging ability, which leads to the decline of the colonies. The others are organophosphates, and we've put in chlorpyrifos because it was one of the major stuff. We know it is currently banned, but it interfered with the nervous system of the bees, resulting in paralysis and mortality. So please, it is an example, and I've put in there, we know this product is banned, and I'm not saying that anybody's still using this product, so please just bear that in mind. It is for exemplary and for example purposes only. Herbicides, although primarily designed to target plants, certain herbicides can inadvertently harm the bees by decreasing the availability of flowering plants and to supply nectar. The other one is fungicides. It is not always deadly, but the fungicides can compromise the immune system of bees and rendering them more vulnerable to diseases. Right? So these are the different actions or detriments or effects that these pesticides have on our honeybees as such. I've got a chart here and we just listed it randomly, and we were looking at if you look at the high level ones, just let me get my pointer out. So if you look at these, that is highly toxic, all the highly toxic pesticides. So you see imidacloprid is up there. We've got fructanol, we got lambda cyhalothrin. There is still the chlorpyrifos and the methanols and stuff, indoxacarb, abamectin. These are the highly toxic stuff for the bees. And it is just for a chart to show the few examples that came out of the various studies and analysis that was done. Right. So if you look in South Africa, the pesticide and the major driver of our bee mortalities is the pesticide poisoning. The Western Cape has experienced severe spikes, and I mean that was and based of the news industry that's taken that I've just showed the spikes in the bee, and that was linked to the agricultural chemicals as such. Recent incidents included mass die of colonies caused by fipronil and chlorphenapir. Both of these are broad-spectrum insecticides, and they are highly toxic to bees as well. A lab analysis, and I said these lab analysis was done, and the analysis therefore confirmed fipronil and more so chlorphenapir in bee poisoning in multiple events. Additional detections of improper applied fungicides, usually considered non-lethal, but they can become toxic to bees if they are misused. Right. The Western Cape Bee Industry Association also warned of the careless agricultural chemistry or chemical usage, and it threatens the commercial population and also the native bee populations. Habitat loss is also a major one, and especially the removal of the eucalyptus trees, because the eucalyptus trees, 70% of them supply the food or nectar to the honeybees as such, right? And the foraging as such, once the trees are taken out, it becomes more scarce for food availability for bees. And then the other one, obviously, is the land conversion, urbanization, and agricultural land where the natural habitat is being cleared off, and this reduces the plant diversity for bees, poor nutrition, and then obviously the bee immunity to diseases as such, and especially the varroa mite that is on the increase. Then the other causes that we are looking at is then climate change and extreme weather. especially in Southern Africa with where they had all the droughts and then also some of the heat waves. This further weakens colonies and increases the beekeeper cost as such. Parasites and diseases, and this is the biological threats, pathogens and parasites found in the African honeybees is the Varro destructive or the African foul brood and Nosa serenae and other pests and predators. We then also look at the improper and high risk agricultural practices. South African beekeepers have reported losses associated with reckless agricultural use, poor communication between farmer and beekeepers, and then inadequate enforcing of pesticide regulations. We're also looking at environmental disasters such as wildfires and floods. And I mean, we know this year that it was, or the floods that has taken place. So the Western Cape was also one of the areas again that was severely impacted with the floods and stuff, and the bees and colonies, and especially the foraging and the food sources were under direct threat. And if there's no food, the bees then just naturally die off as such. Okay, evaluating the risks of pesticide to bees in normal agriculture production. We consider the intrinsic hazard of the pesticide molecule to the bees, the toxicity, the half-life of the actual product, if it's systemic, and then the physical chemical characteristics or the building blocks of the actual chemical, how it works and the breakdown of it as such, and the effect that it would have on the bee. Crops in which bees forage, the pollinator, and the attractiveness, the pollinator resilient or reliant on the crop, such as bees need that particular crop, seasonality of the crop, typical crop pests and pesticides required to keep the pests under control, and then flowering stages of the crop. The environmental situation, as we said, we're looking at the regional crop matrix, the natural bee for the vegetation, and producer attitude towards the bees. And then lastly, what we will look at is the application technology and methodologies of the foliar applications. Are we using booms? Are we using mist blowers? Is it aerial application, knapsacks, soil drench, or basal stem applications? So all of these stuff have an effect at the end of the day where we need to review and look at our systems that is currently being used as such. What are the broad environmental impacts of the dying of the bees? And this is what we are looking at and at the present moment. So, first of all, is the disruption of pollination. So bees are essential, and we all know that the bees are essential for the pollinators for many plants, including our crops. And our industry, and I'm talking about the agricultural industry, is very much dependent on our bees to ensure our pollination with that. With the decline of our pollinators and the pollination, it definitely affects crop yields. Plants diminish or reproduction of the plants because it affects that. There is no other pollinator, and at the end of the day, it will be depend on manual pollination. If the bees are then extinct or they at such a stage where they are critically shortage of bees or have been died off. The loss of biodiversity. Many plant species, and this is over and above the agricultural industry, we talk about the environment and such, are reliant on bees for reproduction. I mean, without bees, certain plants may struggle to survive, leading to a decline in biological diversity and affecting animals that depends on these plants. So it becomes a whole environmental impact as such. And impact of that would have a ripple effect on all the environmental or animals and plants dependent on that particular chain or food chain as such. Bees support ecosystems by pollinating plants that serves as food, and I've just touched on that now. Their decline can disrupt food chains, impacting on herbivores and the predators that rely on them as such as well. Economic consequences, and this is the major thing that we are looking at. Agriculture depends heavily on the bee population. A decline in bee pollination or population, can lead to reduced crop production, affecting food supply and increasing cost for farmers and consumers. Imagine if there was a major shortage now of bees. The decline in the availability of any produce on the table, whether it's an apple, pear, wheat, whatever the case may be. What would the cost impact be? Because there's demand for apples, but there's only a certain amount that can be supplied. The impact of importing fruits or vegetables into the country. All of these have consequences, and the economic consequences is at the end of the day the cost to the farmer and to the consumer. Climate change implications. Bees contribute to the carbon sequestration by supporting plant growth. Their decline could lead to reduced vegetation, affecting the carbon absorption and exacerbation of climate change. Therefore, please, protecting bees is crucial for maintaining ecological balance and food security. Right. So what can we do? Promoting responsible bee protection in agriculture requires a combination of sustainable farming practices, policy support, community engagement as well. And here are some of the key strategies that we've got. There are many more, but I've put on a few. Adopt bee-friendly farming methods. Farmers can implement practices such as diverse crop rotation, cover cropping, and plant hedgerows with native wildflowers to provide food and habitat for bees. Reduce harmful pesticide usage by IPM or integrated pest management strategies, and prioritizing non-chemical pest control methods, and encourage the use of selective bee-compatible insecticides applied at times when bees are less active. Time target pesticide application. Apply insecticides at times when the bees are less active or inactive. Late afternoon, early morning, and very early in the morning if possible. Right, these are all practices that we can implement and we can get around doing that. The other one that I just wanted to bring in here as well, bring it closer to home, even in our households as well. I mean, if there's bees or swarm of bees settling around, instead of getting exterminated, get a bee removal company. Okay, let's not always run for a doom and get a drop of doom and chase the bees away. They can be relocated. So, and that is why more and more you'll see more and more companies are advertising bee removal instead of bee termination as it was in the past. Okay. The challenge is crop protection compatible with honeybees. Pesticide labeled directions in South Africa, the bee warnings and safety statements. Um, More than 90% do not apply when bees are active in crops and apply before bud formation or after 90% petal drop. Problem? Some insecticides are registered for crops during full bloom and even onto flowers to control insects. Crop producers do not necessarily follow the label instructions, and the major one is pesticides are used off label. Not always, but yes, these are some of the cases that does happen. What we are striving for and what we are looking for, we are looking for an integrated pesticide management system because it gives the bees or honeybees or even the pollinators a much better chance. Limiting use of harsh pesticides. Looking at biological crop protection solutions. Strictly adhering to the label requirements. Applying pesticides when pests breach economic thresholds. Applying insecticides when bees are not foraging crops or offering bees alternative food crops. The toxicological facts. Bees in different contact with any pesticide sprays equals a guaranteed mortality. So any pesticide that is direct contact with the bee will result in their mortality. Right? Bees in direct contact with totally dry treated plant surface has a very limited risk. Bees in contact with pollen nectar which crop is treated with systemic pesticide has a 50-50 chance of survival. Late afternoon and evening spraying limits toxicological risks. What about early morning and dew? So these are the questions that have been asked. These are the factors that we need to start looking and to start considering about. Best practices to protect your honeybees in the agricultural system. We are looking at to reduce and manage pesticide exposure. So pesticide is one of the most significant threats to the honeybees, and reducing exposure is essential. Integrated pest management is one of the solutions that is being looked at and that is being implemented across the board now to minimize this effect. Prioritizing of non-chemical and cultural controls where possible. Apply pesticides only when pest thresholds are reached. Please do not when it is a spot, when we see there is an outbreak or something, or just the start of, do the scouting properly, establish that there is definitely a pest outbreak before we start just applying a random blanket cover treatment of a pest for pesticide, right? Select products with minimal toxicity to bees and short environmental persistence. Improve timing of chemical applications and spray outside of peak bee foraging periods, and we've got your early morning or late evening. Avoid spraying during crop bloom whenever possible and check weather conditions. The wind increases spray drift. And very importantly, coordinate with the beekeepers. Communicate the timing of the application location of your beekeepers. Where are the hives? If you liaise and talk to the beekeepers and stuff and establish, they can also ensure that the hives are moved out of the area that is going to be sprayed timeously. Well, that a certain area is going to be sprayed, and they can take the necessary cautions to ensure the safety of the hives as such. Okay. Provide and protect bee forage habitat. Healthy bees require abundant of diverse nutrition. Like us, we just don't want to eat meat and potatoes. So we also want to have some fish or something of the sort. Likewise with the bees, we need to have a diverse range of flowers or plants for the bees. Therefore, create a bee-friendly landscape. If we can create a foraging area with all different kinds of nectar-bearing trees or plants to promote the proper feeding and growth and nutrition for bees. Plant native flowering plants around fields and field margins. Aim for continuous bloom flowers throughout the growing season. Protect natural habitat. We have been talking about now clearing of the lands, clearing of fields, affecting the foraging plants for bees. So let us reserve and have areas deemed just, and let's call it in inverted commas, a sensitive area just for your bee foraging and have that as a natural clean no-go zone area. Preserve hedgerows, wildflower strips and uncultivated areas. Right? These serve as nesting sites and provide forage diversity. Avoid contaminated water sources. Ensure bees have access to clean water and pesticide contaminated sources are harmful. So if you have a water source next to a field, depending on the drift that it goes, all of that will go and settle right into that dam next door as well. Right. Adopt ethical bee-centered hive and colony management. Farmers also maintain hives and collaborate with beekeepers and can apply sustainable beekeeping principles. And that is why we said we need to build a proper relationship with the beekeepers on various time schedules and timing of sprays as such. Use sustainable hive management. Conduct regular hive inspections with minimal disruptions. And then monitor your hives and the bee colonies also for the vara mite and use IPM based control strategies. Use locally adopted bees. Local bred queens and colonies have higher resilience and better local disease resistance. Right. Let's also look at proper hive placement. It's no use putting the hives into a direct sunlight or into the on-facing winds. So have a proper hive placement and look for more conducive places to set your hives for proper colonization of these hives. Place hives in sunny sheltered areas to diverse forage but away from the pesticide zones as well. And that is important. What we want to do, we want to encourage farmer and beekeeper collaboration. Strong coordination improves outcomes for crops and pollinators. Share pest and pollination activity information, as I said, and then jointly, and this is very important, jointly plan the pesticide applications and pollination schedules. And this is even across the board with your neighboring farmer as well. Use collaborative pest scouting to improve timing and reduce chemical reliance. Support beekeeper access, and then also importantly provide safe hive placement areas near agricultural fields. Ensure flowering plants is accessible and chemical exposure are minimized. Let's plant natural breaks. If there is drift, plant a natural break to minimize that drift. Implement broader ecological farm practices. And here we are looking at agricultural systems that can be designed to support pollinators at scale. Again, enhance landscape diversity, encourage polycultures, crop rotations, and intercropping. And more diverse landscapes provide greater food and nesting resources. Restore and protect wild pollinator habitat where possible, and partner with conservation groups to restore degraded habitats. Habitat restoration increases the overall bee resilience as well and health of the bees. What do we need to do as well from a stewardship point of view on farm is educate worker and promote awareness. Human behavior on farms directly affect bee safety. Train the agricultural staff, recognize bee activity patterns and avoid unnecessary disturbance. Learn safe practices around hives and bee foraging areas. Stay updated on the bee health research and then keep in contact with your local extension services and environmental groups. And then this helps adjust practices as new threats or emerging or solutions emerge as such for the beekeeping. Right, one of the factors that I also want to talk about is removal of the honey in certain areas where the bees have been foraging and the honey is removed in the winter period, which does affect and starve the bees of their natural food as such. So, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, that is the end of this webinar. I am going to open up for any questions if there are any questions on this. I don't know if any of you have any questions to ask me, but please be free to ask. Or if there's any comments that you would want to know about this. I have asked in my previous stewardship forum if there was a need and do our members foresee a need, because I know I was led to believe by Dr. Verdoring that we did have a pollinator forum before. Is it necessary that we still should continue with this, because we would like to create the awareness and share more or less ideas what we can use and train and use as stewardship to improve our pollinator safety? I also want to reach out to you again with that same question. Is it necessary to have this forum? I know there's many of us belong to the various pollinators or bee associations as such, but if there's any way that we could collaborate and to ensure our bee or pollinator safety, it would be tremendously appreciated. Right. I don't know if there's any questions. Okay, the presentation is there. I don't know if there's any of you that has any questions to ask. Nothing. Okay. Okay. Then, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no further question, nothing to ask. I know this was a very short presentation. As I said, going forward, we are going to be looking at our presentations being within 35 to 45 minutes, where we are going to be allowed then a 15 to 10-minute answering question session. And if there's any ideas coming you forward from any of us, of our members, on any topic that you would like us to discuss, to like us to have a webinar on, please pop us a mail and let us know what we should be doing and what you are interested in hearing for us going forward. On that note, I want to thank you to everybody. Once the recording is done, we will upload it, and then the CPD questions will also be available. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for joining the session. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.